Greetings from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Today I'd like to do a brief introduction to MQTT using Microsoft's Gadgeteer. And MQTT stands for Message Queue Telemetry Transport, which is sort of a communication protocol for the Internet of Things. But first let me start with a really short rant. IoT is only new to people who are new, as IoT is really just a new term for an old technology. We called it SCADA when I worked on a system like that 25 years ago when I designed and wrote operation and design simulators for one of the largest pipelines in the world. IT has this horrible habit of taking old ideas, slapping new names on them, and calling it innovation, right? MQTT, for example, was invented in 1999. What has changed is the cost of devices, infrastructures, and systems such that I can now put an Internet of Things system on my office plants to monitor their health and alert me to issues, etc. I don't really care what they call IoT, as it's an idea whose time has come, as it's desperately needed pretty much across the board, so we can gather information around processes, resource usage, cost, and efficiencies, so that we can use real data to make better decisions and optimize processes to improve efficiencies, reduce waste, and maximize profitability. Now that I've had a bit of a rant, let's get to the good stuff, and let me start off with Gadgeteer rocks, and it is one technology I've really enjoyed, as I've been able to build all sorts of different devices and not once have to pick up a soldering iron or wire up a breadboard, as it's like working with Lego, where the concept is to take an idea and focus on building a working product without being sidetracked. If you want a breadboard or solder up new hardware, you can with Gadgeteer. Nothing's going to stop you, but you don't have to. So not only is it a great prototyping tool, it's a perfect educational tool, as you can focus on coding or on hardware, and you can focus on hardware anywhere from the pins on up. It's up to you. So Gadgeteer is a very empowering tool. So in this demo, I'm going to be using M2MQTT. Sometimes I wonder who came up with the MQTT acronym, because it just doesn't flow. Couldn't have been a marketing guy. But this M2MQTT is an open source library which works for a number of .NET versions, including the full .NET framework, .NET Compact framework, and the .NET Micro framework, which is what Gadgeteer uses. This library was written by Paolo, who's written a number of really good libraries that I've used in a number of projects. Now, M2MQTT is available on Codeplex, so it's like I said, it's open source, and I'll include a link to it below, and I'll post the source code for these devices at CodeShare, and I'll include a link to that and a number of other resources below as well. Not surprisingly, there's a lot to cover, and no doubt I'm going to forget to mention a few things, but hopefully I cover enough to help you get going with MQTT and Gadgeteer. Now, one of the reasons you might choose to use MQTT is that it's a very lightweight messaging protocol, so it tends to be very fast and easy on the network bandwidth. And the concept of publishing messages using topics and then subscribing to those topics to receive the messages makes for a very strong argument to use MQTT for IoT type projects. So let's start with a high level view of the setup. I'll bail back in here, put this up. So what I have here is I have two Gadgeteer devices. This top one here, this is what I call the device that I'm wanting to control, and what it has is it has 4 LEDs that we're gonna turn on the different colors and such, and I've added some ability here for us to change how it connects to the broker, so we can see the effect of sessions, and we'll talk about all this later. And then I have down here is the controller, and so the controller has these drop down combo boxes that allows you to set the color for them and then some boxes here that'll show you the color that's being displayed on the LEDs. And then again, we have some different options here so that we can change how we send the messages in MQTT. So let's just jump into the code, and we'll start with the code for the controller. I think that'd be the best place for us to go because it's probably the simplest and gives the most full view. Now, again, in Gadgeteer, it's so easy to build stuff with Gadgeteer. You have it's just like the old VB where you have all these different components. You can drag them onto the designer. You can tell the designer to connect all the modules, tell you how you need to wire it up and stuff. So really cool. And then since we're using a touch screen, we have the designer here where we can go and build the XML string that we put in the designer. So you have all these really cool tools to help you build really cool devices with Gadgeteer. So in this project, how we're going to use the MQTT is that you have some topics. That's the first thing that you do, is you kind of define what your topics are going to be. And so what we're going to do is we have a topic here to turn the light on to some colors. So we have this Gadgeteer device 1 /light /command. So what I'm saying here is on device 1, this is a command for the lights. We have the light number 0 to 3, and then we're going to give it a color, and the color is red, green, blue, white, or off. And then when we send that message goes to the device, it will turn on a light to the appropriate color. Now the device itself, it's going to send out a message, and that message is what the status of that is. So when it changes the color from red to green, it's going to send out a status message saying, hey, I've changed this light to green, or this light is now green. And then we have another status here that is the status for the device itself, whether it's online or offline. And so those are the topics that we're going to use. Now just kind of point out the obvious, but I have device 1. There could be device 1, 2, 3, 4, as many devices as we want. That's not a problem, but to keep this simple, we're going to have one device. And so this is just where we build the strings, and we declare off a static for the MQTT client. Now, when you so you publish messages, so you send out information, but that information goes to the broker. Then the broker decides where to send that information, and so devices, they subscribe to the broker. They subscribe to different topics, and then the broker sends them the information to the topics that they've subscribed to. So subscriptions are really, really powerful because there's wildcards. So I could say, if I want to say, like we have a test client here we're going to use. So if I said Gadgeteer, and I gave it a wildcard, let me connect, and I say subscribe to that, I'm going to get, and you can see I've been playing around with this, setting this all up, I'm going to get all the messages that have anything after Gadgeteer. So I'm going to get the commands, the statuses, everything. Now if I wanted to just get sort of, well, give me the commands for all the devices for their lights, well, I could use a plus sign, right, which represents a single level of the hierarchy. So like, as they've got the example here, sensor plus temp will return the information for sensor 1, sensor 2, etc. And so it's the subscription really makes MQTT really kind of powerful, because you can sort of easily subscribe to all sorts of events that you want to be listening to. For example, like I said, the device that we're walking through here now, we publish commands to the light, but we want to subscribe to getting status information back, whether it's the color of the light or the status of the device. And so we can do that by just saying Gadgeteer status, pound sign, and then we'll get all the statuses back. Now, another thing that MQTT has is quality of service. Now, there's 3 different levels, and so the first level is quality of service is 0. It just fires a message out there. There's no guarantee that it's going to be received or anything, but it's in some ways, I think of this as like a UDP packet. UDP packets are blistering fast, but they come with no guarantee. So the information may or may not arrive, but whatever it was, it's fast. Now, I should point out here that MQTT here that I'm using, it's all done over HTTP, or it could be done over HTTPS. But in this case, so it is using TCP, and there is the TCP handshakes and stuff on connections and all, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee that the information itself is going to be managed as well as MQTT does. Like, for example, if I set a quality of service to 1, well, that guarantees the message will be received at least once. Might be received a couple times. It means that we're just going to keep sending it until we get a reply back that says, yeah, I got it, right? And so it's just going to keep going. Now, if I go quality of service level 2, I know the message will be sent exactly once, right? So, but there's quite a bit of handshaking involved with that. So, the more the higher the quality of service, the more bandwidth, network bandwidth is used, the slower the messages fly. So you want to be careful about how you do this. Like if I say I've got a sensor somewhere that just sends out temperature every 5 seconds, well, if I miss the temperature reading, it's not a big deal. So I'll send that out quality of service 0, and then it'll just fly, and it won't have as serious an impact on my network bandwidth, and like I said, the performance will be really quick. Now, the other thing about MQTT is that it's not the broker that necessarily determines the quality of service, right? When you publish a message, you tell it what the quality of service is that you want to publish it to, to the broker. Now, on the other hand, the person that subscribes to the message also sets a quality of service, so that they can dictate what the maximum level of a quality of service is that they're going to receive this information in. And then that's a nice little feature too. Okay, so let's fire this up and we can see MQTT in action with Gadgeteer. So again, we're going to hit start, and the beautiful thing about Gadgeteer is that it packages everything up for you, sends it over to the device, starts up the debugger, and you get the full power of Visual Studio debugging. So I've set a breakpoint up here that it'll stop when we'll talk about the connection too. So you can see here it's deploying all the stuff out. Now it's firing up the program. It's going through making a Wi-Fi connection to my router, secure Wi-Fi connection to my router, and connecting out to the internet. And then we'll get a breakpoint here where I've set at. So the first thing we have to do with the MQTT is we create a client for it. And so the thing that we do is we tell it what broker we're using. Again, we're using a free for everybody to use test.mosquito.org. I want to try and keep this demo absolutely trivial, so everybody can use it. This is actually a pretty good test site to use. Some things to be aware of is that it's not under your control, so sometimes they might reboot it on you or whatever. So you have to be kind of cognizant that it's a test system. So we create the client, and then we can tell the client, hey, you know, when different events occur, here's the code I want you to run. So when we get a one of the topics that we've subscribed to, when a message arrives, it shows up in this event handler, so we can put the code in for that. Or when we've subscribed to a topic, we get a message back saying, yeah, you've subscribed. When we've disconnected, again, we can process that event. Or we published a message, we can, you know, again, we get a notification that it's been sent. Or we unsubscribed from a topic. Really, the only one that we're concerned about here is this one here, when stuff happens that we've subscriptions that we want to know about. Again, with the MQTT client, we have a number of different ways to connect. I mean, you can have username, password. With Mosquito, though, the username password is null. Then there's this thing called last will. We'll talk about that when we look at the device. And then there's timeouts and such like that. So once we connect, then we're going to subscribe to some topics. And what we've done is, you know, we want those status messages, and we've done this with a wildcard. And so we're going to get those with, all those are going to get sent to us. And then we've also got a quality of service. We've said 0. So just fire and forget them to us. And then I enable the commands on the GUI, so I'm able to go through and start playing with this. So, okay, so we'll let this run, and then we'll flip over to the screen here so we can see what we're doing. So one of the things that we want to do, first we're going to have to connect the device that we're trying to control. So we'll just connect it up, and then since it's coming in on a clean session here, we're going to subscribe so that it starts receiving the commands, or that it can start receiving the commands from the controller. Now you'll notice that one of the things that it did here was it changed all these to off, and that's because when we subscribed to it, it picked up the default configurations and it turned off all the lights. But when it turns off the lights, it also sent the status command that it turned off the lights, and so we see that reflected down here. So if we go in here and we change that to red, well, we see the light up there turn to red, or green, blue, and white. But you'll notice, like, the only thing that we're actually sending is a command to change a light. But then the device up here sends a status command back to let us know that, hey, the status has changed, and so the application changes that here. And so we'll hop into the controller, and we'll put a breakpoint here, and we'll see what that looks like. And so we'll go in here, we'll change light 1 to red. So we get a status command back. That's raised an event for us, and then we're I'm parsing the topic parts back so I can break them up into their bits and pieces. So we have a Gadgeteer device 1 status light. But if we look up here, what we actually received was the topic, and then there's a message that's sent in a byte array. And we'll talk a little bit more about that message here a little bit later. So one of the things we do is we're just looking at this, we kind of parse this up, and we're looking to see if it's a light status or a device status. And then if it's a light status like this one is, we'll just kind of hop through this. We're going to set the light to an appropriate color, and we'll just kind of hop through this. It's a string that we're sending, so we have to go and convert that through to a RGB value, and then we can go through and then we can set the light and invalidate the GUI and stuff so that it updates appropriately. So if we come back into here, we'll see this is now red. And if we go in here and change this to blue, again we get the status message back. And if we look at the message here, that's text for blue, and we'll run that through, and we can see that it has turned blue in both places. So that's how easy it is. Now let's talk about how we publish messages with MQTT. And it's actually really simple. So I've set some breakpoints here, and we'll hop into here, and we'll change this guy to red. And so the GUI indicates we've set up an event inside Glide to handle value changes on the drop down. So we're going to figure out which light that is, and then we set the quality of service and stuff, and then we come down here and we actually just have a send command with the data. So we'll just hop through to that really quickly, and then it comes through here. It puts together our topic for us. So we have which light it is, device 1 command light, and the light is 0. So there's our topic put together. And then we have the color. Now this is a byte array that it converts this into a byte array. Now, so this is, like I said, this is the topic. This is the message. Message in MQTT can be 256 megabytes, so that certainly shouldn't be a limitation on a message size. And then we have our quality of service, and then retain is false. Now what retain is, it basically sets the default message for the queue. So when we started up this device, you saw that the device had all the lights off, but then, almost magically on our controller, the lights all went to off. And so what that was the retain message in the queue going through to the device, and then the device goes, oh, I've got a command here from from the message queue, so the retained value of off. So it set the lights to off, and then that in turn set the status to off, which is what went to our controller, which told it, hey, everything's off, so set yourself accordingly. So we'll let this run, and we should see the light change. We get our status message back, and then we should hit that, and then we should be able to come back here, and we can see that a command red was sent, the light is red, and we received a status message back, which changed our light to red. So now if we say, for fun, let's change our quality of service to a 1. It's hard to test these quality of services to show them, but just to show that it works. And when we get into the device, we'll play around a little bit with that, so we can see a little bit of what happens. So let's change this one to blue. Again, there's our event that our GUI has changed. Our send command. We'll just move the breakpoint for that one down to here, just so we can see that the topic is light 1, the color is green, quality of service 1, and the retain is false. And then we should see our status message back. And again, let's have a look at our topic, light 1 status. That's good. And then if we go back in and look at our our color is blue and the update is blue. So publishing messages with MQTT and Palo's library is really simple to do. It's pretty much brilliant. It's also I believe it's asynchronous, so it's fire and forget, well-written library. So I think what we'll do now is that I'll switch over and we'll take a look at the at the device, so we can play a little bit with sessions, because sessions are a very powerful thing with within Gadgeteer or within MQTT, and again, so let me just kind of unplug these a little bit, and we'll flip around as to who owns who. So this one, I'll plug this guy in here so that he's just getting power, and then we'll set this guy up here so we can work with him through the debugger. Okay, so we've flipped them around, so let's see what happens when we do a connect with a clean session. And by clean session, this means that when the device connects to the broker, it's not connected to any topics or anything like that. And so we come in here, we say connect, and nothing happens. But when we hit subscribe, then it's going to connect to the topics, and we'll note though what it did down here was that it turned everything to off, because the retained values for the message queue that it subscribed to for the lights was off, and so it turned all the lights off. They were already off, but more importantly, it sent the status message to the controller, which turned everything off to off. So let's take a look at the code for the device, and again, very simple little device. I've used these little RGB pixels from Ingenuity Micro. Everything else in these projects is from GHI. And then we'll pop into here. Same library over here, same project that we added to get the M2M QTT such. Again, the topics and everything are all the same. Same technique with connecting with the Wi-Fi. When it gets connected, it comes in here. But what we've done is we changed this a little bit. We broke out the subscribe event, the subscribe command. So when we have the message, the client, then we can subscribe, and we just give it the subscriptions that we want to subscribe to, and the quality of service level for each one of those subscriptions. And then we have a tap event in the GUI to do the connect, and so if we're connected, we can disconnect, or if we're connected, we can disconnected, we can connect. And one of the things that we're doing a little bit differently here is that we are using the full connect. So we're using a last will message here. And so what a last will message is that it's a message that's sent out to subscribers of the last will topic. So for example, if this device was to go offline or crash or whatever, and the broker's unable to pick up a heartbeat from this, it will send out this last will message to all the subscribers of the last will topic, and it has a quality of service associated with it too. So this is a really handy thing, so that if the device crashes, everybody else knows that it's crashed and then can take appropriate action. Whether or not we're using a clean session, this is that retain and such. And so let's just for fun, let's go back into here, and if I turn this off, right, so we've just killed it. Here after a while we should actually see this guy down here is listening for that message. He subscribed to that topic, and we should actually see that change to that. So we'll just kind of pop back to that here in a minute, because we have to wait for the message broker to realize, hey, I'm not getting a heartbeat message from this guy anymore, and then he'll send out a message. So we'll just kind of, while that's happening, we'll just kind of hop back into the code here a little bit and have a look at the device. And so that's what this last will stuff is, which is really kind of a cool feature. Now, when you do a clean session, that means that any previously used session or whatever, we're not using it. It's a completely clean slate. So you have to do your resubscription to your, you have to resubscribe to your topics and stuff. But if the clean session flag is set false, then when the device connects, it will try and connect to an existing session. And the existing session is based on the name of the client ID. In this case, it's the Gadgeteer device. Now, as a security guy, sometimes I get a little nervous about this, because this means I could, if I log in, say here with this MQTT application, I mean, I could change this to whatever that client ID was, Gadgeteer device, connect, and that will connect me to an existing, if there's a session that exists and isn't connected to, I can connect to it because it's based off of the client ID, which means if there's any information in waiting for it in the queue, I'm going to receive that. Which means if there's any private information in there, in a sense, I can kind of hijack the session. So just, you know, the security guy in me just says, you know, be aware that this can be used in ways that you maybe didn't intend or think of. So you just kind of need to be a heads up on that. So we'll go back into here, and you can see that there was a device status offline sent. And so if we come back into here, it says, you know, device 1 offline. So the broker sent out a message saying, hey, you know, this guy, he's gone bye-bye, and here's the last will message that you wanted sent out. So that is how the last will stuff works. So that's kind of cool. That's a really nice feature. So let me turn this guy back on, and we'll start the debugger, and it'll do its thing and prepare all the packages and deploy them out to the device and such. Like I said, it's just as easy as doing a web page with ASP, the use Gadgeteer. So now it's gone in, it started up our application, and it's going to go and do a Wi-Fi connection to my router. And so we should be good to go right now. And so if we hit the connect, we should come into here. So since it knows that it's disconnected, we're going to do a connect. And so again, this is our client ID is Gadgeteer device, username is null, password is null. That's because we're using the demo mosquito server. We have this last will stuff set to true. We have the quality of service for the last will stuff set to 2, which means it's going to be received exactly once. Device status, so this is the topic, and this is the message that it's going to send if this thing goes bye-bye. So, and then the clean session flag right now is set to true, which means we're not going to, it's a clean session, and there's a timeout for 60 seconds. So we'll let this run, and then we'll go into here. Now note, we haven't subscribed to anything yet. So if I go in here and I say turn that to red, tell my kitten to get off my computer, and so if I turn this to red, well, you know, it sent a message out, but nothing was received up here because we're not subscribed to any topics. So if I turn that one to green, same thing. But now if I turn this to quality of service 1, and I say turn that to red, now if I do a subscribe, what's going to happen here? So up until this point, we haven't been connected to a message queue, like, so the device isn't receiving anything. So if we subscribe, so there's our subscribe, and our quality of service is 1, and so we're just subscribing to the commands to the lights, and we'll let that run. What is going to happen? Well, so what's happened here is it's taken the default values from the message queue, and that's all that's happened. And so it's set the lights to off, and then of course that triggers a status update to these guys. So all the lovely colors that we set are gone. Now, so clean session, so now if we go in here and we set this to red, we're going to get a red light, and then that comes back as red. So clean session is literally a clean slate, but now what happens if we turn clean session off, right, and we disconnect, and then we connect again? So this time we're coming in with a clean session, and so we connect. Now, the first time we connect, right, basically it's a clean session again. So we have to subscribe. And so we're going to subscribe to these guys. And then inevitably what that does is, again, we get our default retained values of off. And so we can come back in here and we can say red, and it'll turn everything on. Now, where things get different with having clean session set to false is the next time that we disconnect. So we'll disconnect, but then if we reconnect to that previous session. Now you'll note that we have one red light here, and so if we connect, well, you know, we don't, and if we come in here, this will show that, and we set that to green, well, you know, the light, we didn't subscribe to anything. That's because the session we're using an existing session that already has a subscription to the command queue. Now, something else that we can show is if we disconnect. Okay, so we're not, the device isn't connected, but we're going to set this guy to blue. Now we're offline. The device is offline, but we've set somebody to blue, and then for this one we're down here, we're going to set this guy to red. Now note the quality of services here. So when we connect this guy back, let's just turn that debug off. We've talked about that. Well, you'll note that this light came on to blue. The red guy never came on. That's because this quality of services was 0, which meant we literally just threw it out the door. And whether the device, I mean, there's no guarantee of delivery. But with the blue, we set this to a retained to a quality of service 1, which meant he's going to get this guy even when he reconnects, because that message is sitting in the queue for him. So let's go through and we'll play around a little bit with this again. So let's go in here and we'll disconnect, and then we'll set this to white. We'll set him to 1. We'll set him to 2. And now for fun, we'll set his retained value. So we'll go in here and we'll set him to blue, green, and we'll set him to red. And so if we go into and we look at our client here, we'll see that these messages were sent. And then we'll come back into here, except now we'll connect this and we'll see what happens. So we see the guys that we sent with a value, quality of service, they got changed up here. This guy didn't, though, because again his quality of service is 0, so it was literally just a fire and forget. Even though the device was off, it fired it over there. There was no device to receive it. Now what we want to see here is what happens here. So let's do a disconnect, except now we're going to connect with a clean session, which means, you know, we're starting with a clean page. So we're going to do a connect, but now that means that we need to do a subscribe. And so we're just going to do a subscribe, and let's go back into here and see what happens. So now you can see that this retained value down here now became the default, and this light became red. These guys were all turned off. And so hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of what clean session does in MQTT. Now, I think that basically concludes the demo that I've got here with MQTT. I'm going to knit all my bits and pieces together, and hopefully make a coherent video out of this. But again, this basically kind of shows the power of Gadgeteer, where you can build your Internet of Things devices. You can use MQTT, courtesy of Paolo's fabulous library. And might I say, anything that's written by Paolo is worth looking at, and he has a number of open source libraries available on CodePlex, and I've even set up his NatMQ on Azure, which is really kind of cool. At this moment, NatMQ is a bit of a work in progress. It's about 90% done, really. He's only got a couple things left to do on it, and let me tell you, running that in Azure is really kind of cool. Again, Gadgeteer is a phenomenally powerful tool that allows you to do all sorts of things with it, and I've always enjoyed working with Gadgeteer because some of the libraries that are available for Gadgeteer just make it even more powerful, and so like I said, I really do quite enjoy working with Gadgeteer. I should maybe do one more thing here. If we do a disconnect here, right, and I go through and let's change both these guys to red. And I change this guy to red. And change this guy to green, and we'll change this guy to blue. But note that it's retained, and that the quality of service for these guys is 1 and 2. Now with session set to false, we would have got this change, but if we do a connect now we're using a clean session, which means we're not subscribed to anything now. But if we do subscribe, what do we get? We'll just run that back. So you see, we lost these quality of service guys. They didn't come through because we're using a clean session. However, the retained value did, and so again, I guess that's the last piece of clean sessions. But anyways, back to what I was saying, Gadgeteer is a wonderful tool to work with, and you can build full Internet of Things devices, controllers, and such with this. One of the other, I should probably show one last little thing that I can do of why I separated out the status and command. So if I come in here and I say Gadgeteer, and we're just going to do, if I say Gadgeteer device 1 / command / light, and let's just say 0 / light 0. So there's my topic, and I say red, and I publish this guy. So we should see the light turn red, but even though this guy didn't send the command, he gets his light turned red. So even if we say it the blue, right? And so that's kind of a cool feature, like I said, of using subscriptions with MQTT. Anyways, this ought to be an interesting edit job to put all this together. But I do hope that this has helped you out with a little bit of MQTT stuff, and Gadgeteer, and M2M QTT, the really cool library from Paolo. And I'll put all the links together down below so you can grab the source code for everything, and hopefully you enjoy this demo more than more than me putting it together. I love building stuff with Gadgeteer. Sometimes I find it a little bit frustrating doing these demos. I'm a scientist. I love building stuff and learning stuff, and I do love sharing it. It's just that sometimes I find doing videos or presentations hard for me to write or put together, but I hope this helps you. Anyways, until next time, so long from Calgary, Alberta, Canada.